Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Hope everyone is doing well. Great to see so many familiar faces.
Hello.
Hi, Michelle. Sam.
Hey, how's everyone?
Good.
Good.
Hi, Meredith. Naomi. Ashley, feel free to share where you're joining us today from. I'm in chilly New York City. It does not feel like spring.
I'm so cold today. I didn't dress warm. It's so cold. Ugh.
And then I want to give a warm welcome to any first timers. Is this your first roundtable? Please let us know. Awesome. Oh, I love hearing little kids. Dogs too, they're all welcome here. All right, well, we have a great agenda today and a packed crowd, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time and get started. So nice to see all of you. I'm Allison Matizik. I'm the VP of Enterprise Sales for Ellevate Network. I'm joined by my co-host, Joanna Polgarin, our Senior Program Manager, and I want to give a warm welcome to our chapter leaders and corporate partners, as well as those who it may be your first time. A few housekeeping things, and to make the most of our time together, I just want to share a few expectations. For our roundtables, we encourage active listening, give your full attention to our speaker and what other attendees are sharing. Turn your video on when possible. It helps us feel more comfortable in a room of familiar faces. Also share bravely and participate in the breakout rooms. Listen and share with others that you meet. Have respect for each other. This is a judgment-free zone, so come in with an open mind and support one another. This can be just through advice or solidarity in another member's situation. And today we're burning the burnout once and for all with Neff Tefera, who's a certified leadership and life coach. And just to get a sense of how everyone is feeling, let us know how you're doing in the chat. You might be tired, exhausted, but give yourself a big pat on the back for showing up today and making time for yourself. So that's major. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Neff. Thank you so much for being here. Neff, it's all you. We're putting your slides up. Great. Carol, you're feeling fabulous. I love the energy. Motivated and energized. This is great.
Awesome. Do you guys all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for that introduction, a gracious introduction. It's a pleasure to be with you all here today. Burnout is something that hits home for me. I am a certified leadership and life coach, but by profession, I am a pharmacy operations leader. So working throughout the pandemic, especially the peak of the pandemic, burnout was real, burnout was paramount. And for a while as a leader, you felt like you were living in this land of hypocrisy because you're providing guidance and vision to your team, but internally, you don't know when this is going to end. You don't know when we'll get to the end of this pandemic. And the workload was heavy, and just the fear was just all over the place. So burnout was something that I dealt with personally. I've seen it amongst my team, and it is something that is dear to my heart. So I'm really happy to be with you all here today to unpack burnout and what it really means and how we can prevent and combat it. So objectives, I went over what we'll go over, what it is, the signs and symptoms to look out for, and a toolkit of resources that we can employ in our lives. So I'll get started with the World Health Organization's definition. It's a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. Christina Maslach, who was a pioneer and trailblazer in her work with burnout, has three components that she uses to define burnout. There's the emotional overload exhaustion component, the depersonalization, which is really centered on cynicism, and achievement void, where we have reduced accomplishment, satisfaction, and decreased sense of worth. It's important to mention that the World Health Organization at this point only recognizes workplace burnout, but we all know as caregivers, as mothers, as service leaders, that burnout exists in different spaces and can have similar effects. So just to give you some perspective, because many people believe that burnout is just a word that just came out of the pandemic. But it's been with us for quite some time. It's been with us since the 70s. But recently, a survey in 2021 looked at 1,500 US workers. And in that study, they were looking to see how many would report feeling burnout. Approximately 1,500 US workers reported feeling burnout. And by the end of 2021, we saw 4.3 million Americans quit their jobs, and we know it as the Great Resignation. There are some that believe that burnout is just something that these millennials are saying. This is not any new phenomenon. This is something that just comes with the job. So Asana also had a study conducted, and they looked at burnout amongst our Gen Zers. 84% reported feeling burnout. Our millennials, 74%. And to be expected, our baby boomers reported the least amount of burnout at 47%. Of this population, 67% were women, 59% were men, and 63% of the employees overall experiencing burnout felt that it was just a part of success. By a company, research by Deloitte and Workplace Intelligence, 43% of workers reported feeling exhausted always or often, 42% were stressed, 23% reported they were depressed. Many times when it comes to the conversation of burnout, there's a lack of awareness, and there's a lack of language to even articulate what's taking place. And it's interesting that certain age groups feel that it's kind of part of the game, you know, and it's where we see a lot of our disconnect in the workplace, and where a lot of our research and discussion really needs to take place. So some of the risk factors, when looking at burnout, Christina Mashlosh and her team discovered that there were 6 main risk factors to consider when looking at burnout. They include lack of control. This is where we see our micromanaging. This is where we see work environments where employees feel like they're working for their leaders instead of working with their leaders. Dysfunctional workplace dynamics where we allow toxicity to creep in and stay. Unclear job expectations, not really utilizing our check-ins to be meaningful and impactful. Our employees don't really feel aligned and therefore are not really sure what they should do or where they fit in. Work-life imbalance. There are a lot of cultures, workplace cultures that have now gone away with being able to get your paid time out. So instead of just allowing you to accrue hours without any limit, they are forcing employees to take time off so that they don't just have a big bank, which is helpful. Also, we see that some employers are taking the approach of not allowing employees to just get paid out for their PTO, so to encourage them to actually take the time off. Extremes of activity. This is really what I think about when I think about the peak of the pandemic. It just seemed it was never going to end. And being in the healthcare space, it was really heavy. We were dealing with shortages, dealing with call outs, dealing with the fear, and just coming up with policies nonstop. So it just seemed very extreme for very long. Lack of social support and recognition. We're finding a lot of research that supports when team members don't feel heard, seen, or respected, that can really lend itself to some burnout. And not feeling seen or heard really puts you in a place of not knowing your value at work, your contribution, and you're less inclined to innovate, create, and add value to the team. So some of our symptoms, I really want to go over this because oftentimes burnout is just minimized to just being stressed. And sometimes it's categorized as depression, and they're not the same thing. Some of the physical symptoms include feeling tired, difficulty sleeping, change in appetite, headaches, muscle pain. Emotionally, will show up with lacking motivation, self-doubt, self-sabotage, feelings of failure, and just an overall dissatisfaction. Behavior-wise, there tends to be some isolation, not performing as well as we normally do, and some work-related anger. A lot of these symptoms and signs relate to work. Stress, when we're looking at the difference between stress and burnout, we're looking more so at over engagement, overreacting, hyperactivity, a loss of energy, potentially leading to anxiety disorders. Primary damage is physical, and it may kill you prematurely. Burnout is more so the absent of. So we're disengaging. Our emotions are blunted, that numb feeling, helplessness, hopelessness, leading to detachment and potentially depression. Our damage is mostly seen emotionally, and we may make life not worth living. So burnout is just more so the result of unrelenting stress, but it isn't the same as too much stress, because with too much stress, it's more so looking at our overactivity, whereas burnout is just more so not enough, feeling empty. And it, like I mentioned earlier, it does parallel some symptoms related to depression, but it is not the same. And one of the examples I like to use, depression, for instance, it doesn't change based on the scenery. If you are depressed at work and I say, let's go to Tahiti this weekend, more than likely the symptoms of your depression are going to stay in place. Versus burnout, if I present, hey, we are taking all your work from you today. We are going to Bora Bora. Your work will be taken care of, your files, your portfolio. No one's going to be angry with you or upset with you when you come back. Let's go. Slowly, you see a change in the disposition of the person that has been experiencing burnout. So the way we respond to that stress is very different when you're looking at burnout versus depression. So really, how do we go about mitigating burnout? I think of a 3R approach where we are looking at recognizing the signs and the warning signs pretty much of burnout, looking at what we can reverse, and looking at where we can build resilience to take care of our physical and mental health. But many ask, where do we start? If this is something that's already existed, if this is a new climate of just living throughout this pandemic, if burnout is inevitable, what do we really do with this burnout feeling? I submit for consideration this 3R approach as well, where we reprioritize, reframe, and reconsider. When looking at reprioritizing, I'm asking for us to consider what would it look like to be more single task focused versus multitask focused. Many of us are subscribing to so many tasks that are not really meaningful, that don't really add value or add purpose to our lives. And the balance word can be really triggering for me because I don't necessarily believe that we will always have balance, but there are seasons where we have rhythm. So if we're looking at our rhythm, what can we reprioritize and look at to see where we can automate, where we can delegate, where we can reassign, or what we can do away with as a whole. So reprioritizing is a focus that I share with my team and my clients when combating burnout. Reframing the way we look at work. Many of us are just going and doing and never really in the space of just being. What would it look like for you to take a pause, to schedule a pause at work, for you to really reframe what work is to you? Many of us are working for companies for decades, for years, where we're just in automation mode, where we're not really present, and we're just really just going with the flow, but not really centered in what we're contributing to work. What would it look like if you knew the impact and influence you had at work? Also, lastly, reconsidering our commitment. Burnout really leads to an absence of emotion, an absence of commitment to your workplace, but it also can be a sign that you may not be aligned with your current role. What would it look like if you knew your role in that setting, and you were removed from the title, removed from the results that you have in that setting, and considered what it would look like elsewhere? So those discussions that we have to have internally about, are we serving our greater purpose? Have we discovered our greater purpose, and are they in alignment with our employers? It's also important to note that burnout is not individual. It requires some organizational change as well as some cultural changes. We have leaders on this call. We have people that impact decision-making. What would it look like for us to show that commitment to our team? The health and safety of our team should always be paramount. And with the pandemic, we realized that employees were very quick to leave if they realized their health and safety were not a concern for their employers. When we say commitment, are we committing to their well-being at the highest levels of leadership? Are we just simply putting out a statement, an email, and not following up with action? Are our policies changing to reflect the changes we say that are appropriate for the workplace? Are we periodically assessing and measuring what works, what doesn't work? Are engagement surveys including information that can be helpful for us making changes in the workplace? Are we building time for encouraging our employees to take time off, to take breaks, and to just really foster relationships in the workplace that lend itself to productive work? Are we establishing a zero tolerance policy for anything that interrupts peace or that introduces violence in the workplace? So these are things I share with leaders as they look at how they can embrace mental health, embrace wellness in the workplace. So for the remaining of our time together, I would like us to break out into groups and discuss what burnout is. A lot of this is just floating in our head, and it's not until we get together in communion and confession where we can really discuss the impact of burnout and how we can mitigate burnout when it shows up. So I'm grateful for the help of Joanna and Allison as they get us into different groups, but I hope that we can go over how we're feeling today and the colors described. How often when we feel it, how have you contributed to burnout, and what strategies have worked for you, and how do you go about asking for help?
Thank you, Neff. This is great. I've never really broken down the different elements. I always kind of just package, burnout, stress, everything as one bucket. So seeing it and hearing it this way is extremely helpful. I'm personally very guilty of not hitting pause, whether it's like at work or at home. So it's a good reminder. All right, everyone, this is where the magic happens. We'll be in the breakout rooms for about 25 minutes or so. There's not an Ellevate facilitator, so just do some, light introductions to get to know one another a little bit. And you're going to be best friends by the time we come out of these breakout rooms. I know it. So have fun, be respectful, and we'll see you in a little bit.